Hi, I'm Maria Nodoff. I'm with the Orangevale History Project. I'm here with Ken Benedict, who is our videographer. Today is October 16th, 1922, and we are here today to...
What year?
What?
You said
2022.
You said 1922.
2022. Hey, I was born in the last century, you know. 2022, and we're here today to interview Mrs. Elizabeth Hall. Mrs. Hall, what year were you born?
1924. Chico, California.
You were born in Chico.
Uh-huh.
And what brought you to Orangevale? When did you come to Orangevale?
Well, I had two brothers. They were both born in Washington, and my parents moved. Somebody they knew lived in, and one of my brothers had gone, Elmer. He was the oldest one. He went to Sacramento. His name was Elmer Eugene Coppinger.
And what year was this?
I was not even a year old when they moved to Sacramento on 2nd Avenue.
And so did you move with them? Yes, because you were
Yeah,
saying...
my brother already had gone ahead.
Okay.
He always went to work.
Okay, so...
Turn that mic a little bit left.
Ew.
Yeah, right there is good.
Good.
Yeah. Thanks.
So, Mrs. Hall, so you arrived here when you were 1 year old?
In Sacramento.
Yes. And...
Yes, I wasn't quite a year old, and they moved on to Sacramento, and they lived someplace, and then they got a house on 2nd Avenue. And I grew up until I was, I lived there until, no, I was 12, no. I was 2 years old, not quite 2 when we moved to Sacramento. And we lived on 2nd Avenue.
And you went to Orangevale when you were 5.
And I've been there, and then my dad was a paint contractor.
what was his name?
His name was Frank Vernon Coppinger. And the lead in the paint in those days caused cancer. And he died when I was around 12.
That's very sad.
And then my grandparents was my mother's mother and father. Their name was Daniel Wilburn Porter. And they lived in a 2-story house on Hazel Avenue. My grandmother's parents were from North Carolina. My grandfather was from some other state and he went to North Carolina to work, and he met my grandmother, and she was a school teacher. And he met Marina Adele Porter and married her. And so then her name was Marina Adele Porter. And my mom was born there in North Carolina, and then they moved west. Someone they knew had moved west, and they followed them.
And so you moved to Orangevale when you were 5 years old?
Let's see, my dad. Yeah, I was about, yeah, I went to school. Mrs. Cable was the first teacher I had.
So
Sadie Cable. Yep,
and-
she lived right over here.
And so did you go to Orangevale Elementary?
Orangevale Elementary, and San Juan High School. And when I went to high school, Mr. Mooney was president, and he was the best person. He'd always come around and he'd put his arm, "You're a good you're a good character." I always tried to do everything, sports and everything.
What kind of sports did you do?
I didn't do nothing really serious. Everything that those days we were out on the field kicking a bucket or something.
So where did you live when you moved to Orangevale? Did you
I
live
lived with my grandparents because my dad died when I was 12, and we lived with my grandparents.
So that was on Hazel Avenue?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you lived
Yep, right there on Hazel.
Hazel and Greenback were the Walmart parking lot.
And then the Woo Boys bought the corner, and my grandparents' house was right there near the corner. And my husband built that for us to live right next to where the Woo Boys store was.
All right, so the Woos lived there too.
Yeah,
For quite a while.
The boys. They
So-
came from San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And I always kept in touch with them. I haven't the last year or so,
Well,
but
sadly, all the Woo brothers are passed now.
yeah.
But we interviewed two of the wives a few months ago. That was really a good interview.
Yeah.
So you lived.
Is Donna, is she still alive?
So you lived in what's now the parking lot of Walmart. You went to school at Orangevale Elementary. What are your memories of going to school at Orangevale Elementary?
I had good teachers. Mrs. Corquette, and she lived down by near Main Street. My brain isn't, it doesn't keep up anymore.
Never heard of a Corquette yet.
No, that's the first time we've heard that name, Mrs. Corquette.
Really?
Yes.
She lived down on clear down at the corner.
Okay, so any other memories of Orangevale Elementary?
Let's see. I don't know. My brain isn't functioning.
Was this the house on top of the hill? The school? That was
Yeah,
on top of the
yeah,
hill?
yeah.
And they had a bell on top of the roof?
I don't know about a bell. I don't remember that. But I always walked all the way to school, and it was a long ways from. I had to go down where we lived. I had to go down Hazel to Central, and then go down all the way Central to the school. And I always walked. And there was a dirt road. Sometimes I'd go through there, and there was, I can't remember what her name was. I hadn't thought of her so long. But she was, they lived there a long time, right on the corner. And we knew that the Denny's lived on the corner in that big corner house on Greenback there. Their name was Denny. And he used to, my grandfather had grapes, and he made wine from the grapes, and Mr. Denny would walk over and they'd meet down in the grape vineyard and drink grape wine. I can remember that, and my grandfather would always say, "Do you want to taste?" And my mom would tell me, "No, you don't taste. You never taste." So I never tasted it. I don't know. And in our barn was where he made the wine, and my grandparents had a two-story house there. It's where the apartments are now. And I don't know, I must have been almost 4 years old or 5 when we moved to Orangevale. It's after my dad got sick.
And did you?
And they told me the lead in the paint caused his cancer. And he had to go back and forth to Sacramento for treatments all the time, and he finally went. I was about 12 when he passed. And I had a brother that was born in Washington. I had 2 brothers born up there before my parents moved to California. And one of my brothers got cancer too. But they said his was from, he was building a duplex, one on each side of the street in Sacramento. I was trying to think of the address, but can you remember the address where they lived? I can't think, but it's still there. Anyway, that's where I grew up till I was 5, and then we moved to Orangevale with my grandparents because my dad was sick.
So, did your grandfather, did he make a living growing grapes, or did he do something else?
No, he was retired. He got hurt. He only had, one of his arms was off up to here. It got caught in a threshing machine. It stalled, and he was trying to fix it, and didn't work. So they lived up in Colville, Washington, and then they moved to Sacramento. And my grandfather, he was born up north, and then he went to North Carolina to work, and that's where he met my grandmother. And she was a school teacher. Her name was Marina Adele Hall, and she married my Daniel Wilburn Porter.
Lovely.
What was Orangevale like back then?
Yes. What was Orangevale like back when you were a child?
Oh, there wasn't hardly anybody here. The Woo Boys came after we moved here. They came. Before that was Alice and Cliff Lloyd. Alice and Cliff Lloyd, they had the store. And they moved. They didn't want to stay there.
Was that the general store on the corner?
Yeah. That's where the Woo Boys were. Alice and Cliff Lloyd.
Alice.
Allison, I think she said.
Was it Alice or Allison?
We just called her Alice.
Okay.
And his name was Cliff Lloyd. And they left. They didn't want to run the store anymore. And then the Woo Boys bought it. And they hired me once when I was still a kid almost. I worked in a variety store on the corner from there. I worked there quite a while. I always worked someplace growing up because my dad died when I was 12.
And so did you enjoy working there at the variety store?
I did, because everybody I knew came there.
What was it like working there?
I had to use my brain a lot and make sure that nobody took anything without paying, and I was real careful.
I believe it was Clarence Wu who ran the variety store.
Clarence,
Was it Clarence?
there was, there was a Clarence. Let's see, Frank, Grant Wu, I can't,
There was
Donna married one of the boys. And I don't know. It's really going back there in my brain. My brain isn't functioning as good as it usually is.
so.
I just had a birthday. I'm 98.
Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
October the 6th was my birthday. And I was born in Chico, California, and I'm a year old when my parents moved to Sacramento. And both my brothers were born up in Washington.
What year were they born? Because they were a lot older than you, right? What year were they born? They were a lot older than you, right?
Older?
Were your brothers older than you were?
Yeah, quite a bit.
What year were they born? Do you remember?
They were all both grown when I was born, almost. Elmer married Margaret. Oh, my oldest brother was married to Margaret Minky, and her brother was Dr. Minky for Sutter. He worked for Sutter Hospital. He was a specialist. Minky. Dr. Minky.
When your dad passed away, you had to kind of start working right away. You worked at picking peaches or pitting peaches.
I did everything.
Was that for a company here in Orangevale?
Yeah.
Do you remember what the company name was?
Up there where the Wool Boys where they lived, in that old house.
That's where they used to have. That's where they used to work to pick.
Yeah,
pick
yeah.
and split
Where the
peaches.
boys had a dehydrator there. We used to cut fruit and everything.
And
That's where.
Was that for the Wu brothers?
And no, that was
Tomich?
no. Tom Tomick went to school with me. He was a year older than me. That was I can't think.
But it was somewhere in Orangevale. It was somewhere in Orangevale.
Always. And I worked for Green Alches when they had the dehydrator down there on Pecan. We cut pears. That's how I earned money for school. My mom was still alive then. I don't know. Optics, that name rings a bell. They lived on the corner of past Orangevale School.
What did you do for fun?
For fun? I don't know. We always just kept it going. I played the piano, and now I can't even play the piano. Everything was good. My grandmother and my mom always kept me busy.
Did you go to dances?
Never. My mom always went to church, went to Methodist church, and then I went to Eureka Union School, where a man named Mr. Todd had Sunday school up there at Eureka Union School, and I met kids that I knew up there. And I always went to church someplace. And when we were in Sacramento, we went to the Nazarene church. I always went to church someplace. And since I got older, I never go to church. But the ladies from that church over there, they've been coming once in a while, but they know I don't go.
Did you ever go to the clubhouse in Orangevale?
Yeah.
It's right across the street from you.
Yeah, it was just right there on the corner.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was growing up, the library was there. I used to get books to read there. I always did everything.
What did you do when you went to the clubhouse?
I'd always get a book. They had a bookstore, and I'd always get a book to read and take it home. Because we were real close to the corner. My mom would let me go. And I was 12 when my dad died. And I don't know.
How did you get around? Did your parents have a car or a truck?
My dad always drove. And after he passed, I don't remember. My mom didn't drive. I don't know. I had to, my brother would come from Sacramento, and they lived on 2nd Avenue, and he had Alva and Bob and Dorothy. They had 3 children, and all the kids are gone now. Their pictures are in my... Alva was, she was kind of special. She played the piano and everything. I still...
Did she teach you how to play the piano?
No, but I always played the piano. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, always helped me. It's been way back when. I don't know. My brain doesn't go that far back anymore.
Did you have telephone service at your house?
I don't remember ever having a phone.
Okay.
It was in this big old 2-story house, and I still have pictures. I don't know. I grew up there, and I used to walk through the back road to school sometimes. The name Levy. Mary Oliver, what was her maiden name? They lived up on the corner in the big house on the corner. I don't know. I can't remember everything.
The one at Hazel and Central? I remember that. That was a big house.
Yeah.
And right there on the corner of Greenback and it's Pecan. Is it Pecan or Central? Central goes this way.
Mm-hmm.
And Greenback, just go down Greenback and up on the corner, that big house. It was the next one after Hazel.
What
Yeah.
was Greenback called before it was Greenback?
It was always Greenback as far as I knew.
That house that she's talking about, I think, was the one that was where the orbit station is right now.
Oh,
There was a three-story, huge house.
The Queen Anne Victorian.
Yes.
Okay.
It was on this corner of Greenback and what's the next street from Hazel? Pecan?
There were two big houses across from
Yeah,
each other.
yeah. Well, it's on this corner, and we had friends. Their name was Danny. They lived there, and he used to walk down and meet my grandfather, and they would drink wine and the grapes. My grandfather made wine in the barn.
What'd you do during wartime?
I worked.
Where'd you
I
work?
always worked. McClellan Field, I worked. I had to tell them what book to look in to fix the aircraft. They had come up, and me and Mrs. Backey lived in Citrus Heights. Her name was Backey. I don't know. She was nice. We got along good together. I worked all during the war there, and I always worked someplace. I went to San Juan High School, and Mr. Mooney was the principal, and I can remember he was so special. Always would come and say, "Hi, how you doing?"
When you were in high
He
school,
never did that to everybody.
when you were in high school, what fun things did you do?
Not much. I always just studied and tried to do what was right.
You did some sports, though, right?
Yeah. Out on the field, baseball, I think. Baseball. And then I remembered bouncing the ball and throwing it through the hoop. But I never was, I don't know.
When did you meet your husband?
He was born in Oklahoma. And he came to Bakersfield first to work with his friends. And then he had a cousin that lived in Orangevale. And they lived right near where that, not Green Arches pear shed, but the other one, up off of Central. It was,
Tomich?
no, it wasn't Tomix. It was closer. There was another pear shed. Yeah. And I think it was some Orientals that ran it. I don't remember, but I worked for them cutting pears, and then I met my husband's cousins. They lived right there near it. And then when he came was working down in Bakersfield, and he came up north, and that's where I met him. I was working at Green Arches. I was cutting pears. The day he came there, he was with Gene Gosnell. Gene Gosnell was from Folsom. That was his cousin. And that's how I met him. And he wanted to know. He asked my mom, she was there with me, cutting pears. He asked her if I could walk up with him from Green Arches, go up to Greenback. And then before I went home, and my mom, she didn't want me to at first. She said, no. She said, I don't know you. But she finally let me walk to the corner. And I walked to the corner of Greenback there. And then they went on, and the next time I saw him, we went to Dairy Queen. And I lived we lived with my grandparents
Did
there
your
on Greenback
did
and
your
Hazel.
did your mother know you went to Dairy Queen?
Hmm.
And what was your husband's name?
My husband,
What was his
John Orville Hall.
So you went to Dairy Queen.
And it's funny, we had relations hall all over the place. But I don't think we were related. I don't know. That's his picture up there. I had a better picture, but my son took it home with him.
When you went to Dairy Queen, how old were you?
I must have been about 14 or 15 or older. Round about that.
When did you get married?
When did you get married?
He was home on leave, and we went to Reno and got married.
Do you remember what year?
I can't remember right now.
Do you remember how old you were?
I was over 18. I was over 18. I think it was before my 19th birthday. He was home on leave at Lorena and Ralph Cossey over at their house.
Did your mother know you went to Reno?
Yes, she went with us.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, she knew. Yep, she knew everything I did. I never did nothing without. She was special, my mom was.
Did your mom help take care of the lady that her husband, that development on Greenback and Kenneth is named after?
Mackey? What's it Richard Mackey?
No. On
The Mackeys lived up on the hill from us.
And they were cattle ranchers. Or cattle. They dealt in cattle, right? But on the corner of Greenback and Kenneth, the ranch back there.
Back in Kenneth. I don't know. I can't think right now.
Were there other jobs you had growing up that you remember? You worked at the variety store and you cut fruit. Were there other things you did that you stand out?
Growing up, and I worked during the war. I worked at McClellan Field. I was the technical order clerk at the master file, where the guys had to come up and I had to tell them what book to look in to fix the aircraft. I had to really use my brain. And then I always worked someplace, and I worked McClellan Field.
Mrs. Gum.
Did I tell you that? McClellan Field, I was a technical order clerk.
Yes.
Madison, Kenneth.
Okay.
I always worked someplace.
Your mom was friends with the Gums, too. Mrs. Gum.
Yeah, the name sounds.
Does Gum Ranch sound familiar to you?
Yeah. I don't know. I just grew up right here in Orangevale.
So, when you worked at McClellan, were you done with high school by then?
Yeah, yeah.
And then,
I worked there all during the war
and
with
you,
Mrs. Backey.
and you were married then during the war. Your
Oh,
husband
that was before. That was when my husband was overseas, I think. I don't think we were married then. Were we? I don't remember.
Where did your husband serve?
Where was he killed?
Where did he serve?
He served in, uh, he had 3 battle ribbons, Africa, Sicily, and Italy. And then he was sent home, and he got out of the military, and then he went back in. And we built our house. That picture? Yeah,
And-
that picture.
and what
We
house
built
was-
our house
where was that?
on Hazel, right on the corner of my grandparents' property there. It was next to the Woo Boys.
Right across from Cable Park.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. And Vernon Cable was right across the street. And we were always friends. Vernon was good, and his mother was super good. Yeah, we were always special with the Cables. And when I was younger, Mrs. Corquette was this teacher to it when I was growing up. She lived down on the corner of Central and Main. Corquette. Some things I can remember and some I can't. Lately I've been when you get 98 years old, you don't even think.
If I could have gotten it all cooperated with their sons are here, then they can all bounce everything, and they're much better at reminiscing because they all got little bits and pieces. Because
Are they still alive?
yeah,
Where
Your
are
sons?
where are your sons?
one.
My sons,
Brothers.
one,
No, not her brothers.
Son.
Her
Oh,
sons.
sons.
Yeah, her brothers have long passed. They were older than. They were like, from what I understand, they were like more than 15 years older than.
David is my son. He lives in Washington. He was just down here to visit.
And Danny.
And then John is the middle one, and he lives in Sacramento, and they're up in Nevada right now. Have you heard from them?
They're on their way back now.
Are they? Okay, good. I'm glad. And then he's got my garage full of junk. It is. It's full of junk.
Yeah.
And then I have a younger son. They live on Dalboy Way, which is off of Illinois. And he comes every morning to check on me. And every other day I have to take a shower while he's here. He waits and sits at the counter in there and to make sure I don't fall.
And what's his first name?
Daniel,
Daniel. Okay.
Daniel and Penny. And her maiden name was Foyles. Her mom and dad's both gone, but she takes care of me. She's Dan's wife. They've been together forever.
It's nice of them to do that.
Yeah, they come all the time. She gets my groceries. They don't want me to go shopping, and she brings my groceries and everything. And my daughter died with cancer. She's been dead now quite a few years. That was her picture there of her horse. She always loved to ride horses.
Did she ride her horse in the Orangevale area?
Yeah. She always rode across the street from the high school. And then she would go in the parades. And she had cancer. Anyway, she was young.
What was her name?
Diane.
Diane.
And she was married to Mike Sackett. Michael Sackett. He lives on Main Avenue. He's still perking. He comes over once in a while. And you're a pest.
But do you remember how the powwow day got started?
No,
Okay.
no. I'm glad he took the dog. It's my walking stick there.
I'll grab it if I see it.
I got left it someplace.
Do you remember somebody named Charlie Clark?
Cook?
Clark?
Cork?
Yeah, Charlie Clark.
Uh-uh.
Okay.
Cork, that name don't ring a bell. The Cooks, there was a preacher cook someplace. I remember that name. I don't remember where.
When did you start to drive?
As soon as I was old enough, my mom let me try in the driveway, and then I went and got my license. I think I was about 16.
Did you drive around Orangevale?
Mm-hmm.
What was it like back then?
Oh, I don't know. I just did everything.
Everything was only a 2-lane road, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Hazel Avenue and Greenback and Central. There was no other roads hardly. Up on the hill where Richard lived, his parents, there was Pecan Avenue between, and they lived up on the hill, and he was just a little kid, and he would walk down the hill and come down to play with my boys. And my mother would go up to see his mother. His mother was not, she was ill, bad. And she finally passed away. And Richard lives up, I don't know if it's not too far away. He goes up Greenback, up in there. And he comes down all the time now. He's a good person. His wife died. And he's met this other lady. Her name is Debbie. I don't know what her last name is. But Richard, they were here yesterday. And I had the nicest birthday. I had so many flowers and things. They're still all over the table.
Do you get the family together once a year?
We try to. My son, Dan, they live on Dalboy. And they got kids that live around.
Their brother's the Sacramento County Recorder, right?
Mm-hmm. I don't know. We've got relations all over the place. Anyway, anything I can do?
I can't think of
I
any
can't
more
think of.
I can't think of any more questions, except you raised your children. All your children were here. You raised them all here.
Uh-huh.
And did they go to
I lived on Hazel Avenue.
And where did they go to school?
Orangevale Grammar School,
You're
and they went to Bella Vista.
to Bella Vista. Okay.
Huh? Dan went to Bella Vista too. And him and Penny, her last name was Foyles, Penelope Foyles. And she married my son. They were just kids together. But they had 3 kids. Kenny and Mindy and Buffy, Stephanie. We call her Buffy.